There used to be a time when things were slower, where you could tell a story to your kids or your friends, and they would pass on those stories to maybe their own kids. You would hear stories about your grandparents from your parents, and maybe some trade was passed on, like canning vegetables, or welding, or fixing cars. Things were more oral and hands-on, and you retained information by doing, or by telling, or by listening. Well, things are a bit different now in this information age. We don't know much about our ancestors, we don't ask about things, and we really don't have a culture of remembering and telling stories. In fact, we don't have much time at all. Our phones, they're always begging us to pick them up, and there's ultimately so much information flying everywhere that it's often hard to find even time to gather your own thoughts. So our attention spans are short, our memories are bad, and our own kids probably won't ask or even care about the stories that we have bound up inside of us. Or better yet, with all of this information pouring into our heads, we'll fail to retain most of it. So I think now, more than ever, we should be ferociously writing and taking notes. Notes that we can search, notes that are organized well, and notes that serve as a warehouse of thoughts that we can unload to regularly and retrieve methodically. From personal stories, observations, pithy quotes, to things that we're learning in our careers and businesses. This is something that has become very, very important to me as of late, as I get further into my 40s. I started my blog years ago, and one of the reasons was to serve as a place to put things that I've learned throughout my coding career so that I could retrieve them when needed, and even one day pass it on to a future generation of grandkids that grow up wondering what I was like as a person. So I wanted to do this video to give you a few tips on taking notes, how to start and be consistent with it, what mediums or apps to use, the paper versus digital discussion, privacy, and finally, how to organize these notes such that it becomes what many people call your second brain. So as a software developer, here are some tips. Number one, the importance of taking notes. I can't express how important it is to be a note taker or someone who keeps journals as a developer. How often do you find yourself saying, "Oh, I've actually had this problem before. I just wish I could recall that block of code that I used then to fix it." Or next Friday is my annual review. They're gonna ask me for some big achievements that I've made over the past year, and I can't really remember all of the details of the projects that I worked on. I wish I would have created a short journal at the end of each week, summarizing what I worked on or what big wins I had for that week. Then I could review the 50 or so snippets that I have before this meeting. Like I said, there's so much information put before us each day. Most of it just floats away in a blur, never to be thought of again. Things that you thought were important at that time but had to move away from without a way to remind yourself to consider it later. That's why we often feel so scatterbrained, because we're processing too much information to ever hold on to anything. Taking notes is a way to process. It's a way to organize your thoughts in your head and then to wipe it clean onto paper or into an app you're using. And when I say taking notes, I mean personal notes, journaling, maybe project management, or building up a knowledge base. And whether it's journaling in the morning, a reflection before bed, or a notebook that you carry around with you to use on the fly, it's a practice with many, many benefits, such as improved memory, building self-awareness, better productivity, better mental health, clarity, gaining a better perspective on your life, etc. So that's number one. Number two is don't get into the weeds with the details, at least at first. Now, what happens when you start this journey into note-taking is that you get so caught up in the minute details of all the options you have that you actually never get around to taking notes. I hear this all the time. I watched this video, I got pumped up, I downloaded Obsidian or Notion, I set up all my templates, and then I never actually did anything with it. Thus, I believe it's very important to not jump into or commit to any particular methodology or app first. First, just start taking notes. Start writing things. Just a notebook and a pen. Carry it around with you. And if you're a digital person, just use the Notes app. Start writing stuff. Take notes in meetings. Record important things that you'll think you'll need again. Aha moments, whatever. Get that much down, see where it takes you, what is working, what is not working, and only then start looking into systems and apps. Don't even worry about all that yet, just write. When I was working on my first AWS certification, I bought one of those composition notebooks, the black and white ones that cost like $1 a piece. And as I worked through the courses and the practice tests, I took notes religiously, and I filled up the entire notebook, every single page. And it was messy, but it didn't matter. And I used those notes to study. And after I passed the exam, I threw it away. It served its purpose, I didn't care about the system or the medium, and I was highly productive with it. Since then, I've actually become a bit more methodical. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, tip number 3. Write without looking back. The next key is that you have to learn to stop hesitating. Sometimes we want to have everything perfect before we put that first mark on the page. Well, stop trying to find that right word, or create the right format, or even spell check. There's a place for that, sure, but when creativity hits, or the instructor is talking, or you have something to say, you just have to let it spill out. You have to let the hands go and type what the mind is saying. This is where having a writing tool like Grammarly, who is kindly the sponsor of today's video, will not only help you take care of all that misspelling and bad grammar, all that stuff that we already expect with Grammarly, but now with new AI capabilities can do much, much more. When I write scripts for these videos or for events in my community, or taking notes or journaling, I don't hesitate. When the inspiration comes, I literally start typing and I don't stop until I'm done. Same with emails. I don't want to waste the time proofreading, fixing grammar, or rewriting things to sound more compelling. So after I write any text, I'll go back through and apply Grammarly's suggestions. So first, as I go back through, I can fix any spelling or grammar mistakes that I typed along the way. That's nothing new. But now that I've upgraded to Premium, I have this strategic suggestions feature that can identify the main points I'm trying to make and can offer an improvement that I can apply with a click of a button. I can also ask it, is this text persuasive? I can ask it to shorten it or make it more assertive, among other things. In addition, when I'm writing emails, based on the information that I'm receiving from the other person, I can have it actually give me a starting point by opening the Grammarly dialogue. I see the sender's intent and say I want to ask for more time, and I want it to sound a bit more friendly. Boom, done. It's not writing it for me, but it's giving me a foundation that I can now tweak to speed up my workflow. It works as an assistant. So if you aren't using free Grammarly already, go get it. And then consider upgrading to Grammarly Premium to level up your productivity and get your work done faster with their new AI capabilities. The link can be found down in the description. Now back to the video. Tip number 4, Markdown or no Markdown? Okay, we're finally here at tooling. You've started journaling or note-taking in a simplistic way. You have your spell checker and corrector in place. How do you then choose an app? This question will really help you narrow down your tooling. And given that most of my viewers are developers, I'm going to assume that you're into Markdown. If that's your flavor, which it's become mine over the years, then perhaps an app like Craft, which I used for quite a while, or Obsidian, which I use now, is the way to go. Or you can use your text editor like VS Code to write Markdown and keep it all organized within a folder. For example, here are some notes that I took as I was learning Kubernetes. I have a folder for popular commands for each component, configuration file examples for different components, personal notes, and some definitions. VS Code, it's a simple option and provides an environment that many programmers are familiar with already. And if you want to push it to GitHub or something like that, you can do so. Tip number 5, digital or physical. Now I know the appeal of a physical notebook. I love them. To carry it around with you, to open it when needed. You have a real pen to write on real paper. It's great. The problem though is that you can't easily retrieve things. You can't easily organize or tag things. Just try to find something you wrote even 2 months ago. If you're going to take a lot of different notes on a lot of different subjects, then you want some way to be able to search those notes by keyword or phrase. Thus, I would recommend going digital. But if you must or insist on going physical, then perhaps a hybrid approach works, where you transfer your physical into digital as well. There are apps out there where you can take photos of your document and it'll put it into text for you, and then you can store a copy of that in your digital catalog as well. Actually, I think the iPhone does that already. Tip number 6, privacy. Just a quick note on privacy here. Many people are okay storing their personal information in the cloud or on an app that manages the data for you. That's fine. It all boils down to how comfortable you are with this amount of privacy or lack thereof. When it comes to my notes, especially if it's going to be my personal journal entries, I want a bit more privacy. So be sure you find out where your app is storing this data and how it works to ensure your privacy. I use Obsidian, which actually stores your documents locally, so you have total control and not them. This is just my tolerance. Yours may be different. You do you. And number 7, organization. So you've started, you're consistent, you have Grammarly set up, you have a note-taking app, and now you want to start creating a knowledge base. Like I said earlier, I used to use this app Craft for all of my notes and video scripts, but I used it in the present only. Meaning I'd write the note or I'd write a script for a video, then after the video was done, I would move it to a folder named Archives to get it out of the way, because I was done with it. But in doing this, I'd lose all of the work that I put into it. My thoughts for that script became a thing of the past, something that I've since discarded. And it shouldn't be. Those are my thoughts on particular matters, and I instead should be connecting those concepts to other concepts in the present or the future to build, again for lack of a better word, a second brain. A knowledge base of my own thinking that I can reference, add to, or reflect on. This can include coding concepts, books that I'm reading, my journal, my projects, and many other things. And here's how I put this together. First, I use Obsidian. It's free, you own the files, there's hundreds of plugins, and it has nice linking and graphing capabilities as well as the ability to create canvases. You can get it over at obsidian.md. Second, I use a modified version of a method called Zettelkasten, which consists of 3 categories that you contribute to. The first category is called fleeting notes. These are temporary notes meant to be refined later or even deleted. Don't think much about these. They can be to-dos or random thoughts or meeting notes. They can also expand later into permanent notes. Category number 2 is called literature notes. These are notes created when we learn something from a book that we're reading, or a video we're watching, or an article, etc. These capture key points and ideas from these sources as we consume them in our own words. One example is I use an Obsidian plugin to pull in all of my highlights from my Kindle books. And if I want to expand on a quote or a highlight in my own words or build on it with my own personal thoughts, I would put it here, my personal notes on it, and then I could link back to that imported highlight. And then the third category is called permanent notes. This section includes my ideas that are independent of their original context. No reference to anything. These are long-term and they're a great way to connect and link between the related concepts in your database. Or you can move notes that have been developed as literature notes or even fleeting notes into these permanent notes down the road. And one powerful feature of Obsidian is the ability to link to other documents. And when you start linking things, Obsidian provides you with a map of your links, a graph of your links. And you can use these links to jump around between different topics that you've included in your knowledge base, or you can use the graph to visualize the relationships between your notes. It's pretty cool. And that's kind of the idea with this Zettelkasten note-taking system. You start taking notes, you find time to organize them, turning fleeting notes into permanent notes, or creating reference pages that help you to navigate easier, and more importantly, connecting related ideas and keywords together as you organize, whether this is with links or with tags. And I do want to add, this isn't by the book, cut and dry, but it's a good framework in my opinion to start with. I also manage projects in Obsidian using the projects plugin. I do language learning here, and I track all the books that I've read, the books that I'm reading, or have lined up to read next as well. And really, the opportunities are endless. But start small and then only add as needed. So in this crazy, fast-paced age, take time to capture some of it. Take time to make notes, to organize your life, your brain, and I think you'll find more clarity and appreciation in doing so. So what do you think? Are you a note taker? Are you a person that journals regularly? If so, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinions and your recommendations. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, consider doing so, and I'll see you in the next video.